I'll give way to the Prime Minister.
Yeah, okay, you'll defer? Okay. All right, we're going to take you live now to Holy Blossom Temple in Toronto, where Prime Minister Mark Carney is announcing new measures to combat anti-Semitism. Let's listen in.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Cantor Rosen. Rabbi Splansky, I'm pleased to hear the news of your father. Thank you in absentia, although you're very much present with that video greeting. Thank you all for welcoming me to the heart of Holy Blossom, the heart of your community. Now, I'm going to speak, obviously, to this community, but I want to speak to the nation. Rabbi Splansky, much of what she said resonates directly with what I will say. She said it better. She'll be quicker. So sit comfortably. But let me draw on some of those traditions. 3,000 years, Jewish tradition has taught us that a society should not be judged by its wealth or its power, but how it treats its most vulnerable. The Hebrew prophets returned repeatedly to this lesson. Isaiah called on rulers to learn to do good, devote yourselves to justice, aid the wrong, uphold the rights of the orphan, defend the cause of the widow. Amos warned against societies that prosper while neglecting the weak. The message of the prophets to us was that a just society is sustained not merely by law, but also and most fundamentally by the obligations that we owe to each other. Centuries later, in a different way, Aristotle described this as civic friendship. By friendship, he did not mean intimacy, affection, or fellow feeling. He meant something more demanding and durable. The mutual recognition between citizens that each is pursuing a good life under the same political roof, and the conditions of your flourishing are the same, must be the same as mine. And this is the covenant that makes Canada possible. This is the covenant that is being tested today by the scourge of anti-Semitism. And I want to speak today about that terrible reality, a reality this community has been facing, Jewish community across this country has been facing. I want to speak to that reality and how we as Canadians can restore the full promise of Canadian citizenship to all. Because Canada was not founded on a single creed, race, language, or faith. Instead, we've held our differences in common, beginning after a long period of struggle and oppression with the French and English accommodation. This deepened with Confederation, and it's been carried through successive generations of immigration from every continent and of every faith and none. It continues to be traveled in the long journey of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, the original stewards of this land. Le respect, on fait la célébration.
Respect, indeed celebration for differences, is enshrined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, notably Section 27, which states that the Charter must be interpreted in a manner consistent with the goal of promoting the preservation and enhancement of the multicultural heritage of Canadians. And that commitment rests on a concept that one of Canada's great philosophers, Charles Taylor, called recognition. In his view, recognition is more than just tolerance. Rather, it means actively recognizing that every citizen is made up, in part, of the identity they hold within them through their faith, their language, their traditions, and their history, and that their dignity can only be preserved if those aspects of their identity are taken into consideration.
Includes our faith, our history, our traditions, our culture, as Rabbi Splansky alluded. We have to hold those at the core, because to be recognized, to be truly recognized, is to be received as who you are. Pluralism in Canada is not the exception to the framework. Pluralism is the Canadian framework. Our secularism is open. The state takes no side in the matters of belief, and the institutions of public life are not captured by any faith or identity. In Canada, state neutrality doesn't empty the public square, but ensures that no conception of the good, including humanism or atheism, is privileged by state power, and that every Canadian has the freedom of conscience to live and live fully as they believe. And that means the state, government, above the responsibilities we all have as citizens, and we all have responsibilities as citizens, but above all, government has a special responsibility to ensure that no culture, faith, race, gender, or identity is threatened or suppressed. And it goes further than that. It goes to the responsibility of ensuring that everyone can be their whole selves in Canada. Our fundamental insight as Canadians is that unity is not uniformity, that our differences are strengths to be nurtured, not risks to be managed. And in Canada, faith, language, heritage, tradition aren't concessions to citizenship. They are the expressions of our citizenship. In Canada, the visibility of our differences is the substance of our mutual respect. This is how we hold ourselves together. Now, I don't pretend that this is always easy. Differences generate friction. Accommodation of competing claims is real work sometimes. We'll always have legitimate debates about where those lines properly fall, but those debates are part of how a pluralistic country sustains itself. And today, in Canada, that nature is being tested, as one of our communities is being particularly and brutally targeted. Across our country, anti-Semitism has surged to levels not seen in the post-war period. Last year, over 2/3 of all religion-motivated hate crimes were directed at Jewish Canadians, who make up only 1% of the population. I'm afraid this room knows what I'm about to say all too well. You've lived it. But I want everyone to hear it. Anti-Semites in Canada have fired bullets at Jewish schools. They have thrown firebombs at synagogues. They've attacked community centers. They've targeted Jewish-owned businesses, harassed Jewish patients at hospitals, drove Jewish students from common spaces on our university campuses. They have desecrated our Holocaust memorials. Des parents canadiens doivent désormais
Canadian parents must now ask themselves whether it is wise to send their children to a Jewish school. Practicing Canadians think twice before wearing a kippah in the metro. And the same scourge is plaguing Europe and the United States. It is also affecting the United Kingdom, where the Heaton Park and Golders Green terrorist attacks have profoundly shaken Jewish communities. Also, Australia. Last December, 15 people were murdered on Bondi Beach in the first evening of Hanukkah.
Let me personalize this. Last October, Evan, Solomon, and I, and others, we attended the opening of the Chabad Jewish Center at the University of Ottawa. Remember that? Lovely sunny day. This student center was made possible by the philanthropy of one of Canada's leading entrepreneurs, Harley Finkelstein, who, as a student, had benefited from the teachings and the friendship, the hospitality of Rabbi Chaim Boyarsky. And the rabbi remains at the heart of Jewish student life at that university. It was a joyous event, otherwise joyous event, but it occurred under heavy police presence, and it was interrupted by angry shouts of some passersby. Only a few weeks later, I would next see Rabbi Boyarsky on a bitterly cold Sunday afternoon in December, as we lit the first menorah candle at Ottawa City Hall and mourned the victims of Bondi Beach, which included his friend and Chabad colleague, Rabbi Eli Schlanger. The pain, the threats, the fears can appear relentless. The horror and shame are global. Our actions must be local. And they start with clearly admitting that Canada's civic compact is failing Jewish Canadians. And they extend to all Canadians, recognizing that if that covenant fails one of our communities, it fails us all. Since being elected a little over a year ago, our government has been acting, first and foremost, on the most fundamental responsibility of government, protecting our citizens. We've introduced 6 new pieces of legislation to bolster public safety and to combat anti-Semitism specifically, as well as other forms of hatred. Foremost amongst these 6 bills, Bill C9, the Combating Hate Act, addresses directly the rise in anti-Semitism, hate-motivated violence, and the targeting of communities. It significantly strengthens the civil code, the criminal code, sorry. It significantly strengthens the criminal code by creating new offenses for intimidation, obstruction at places of worship, schools, community centers, and other institutions used by identifiable communities. We have
also reaffirmed the importance of the operational definition of anti-Semitism developed by the International Alliance for Holocaust Remembrance and that Canada adopted in 2019 as part of its anti-racism strategy. This definition allows for legitimate criticism of any government, including the government of the State of Israel, while at the same time naming hate against Jewish persons for what it is.
We're advancing our work to confront hate online and violent extremism, including, not limited to, but including through the Canada Centre for Community Engagement and the Prevention of Violence. That centre leads Canada's works on countering radicalization to violence and supports prevention, research, frontline intervention through the Community Resilience Fund. Last year, the government announced more than $36 million for projects to counter violent extremism, including early prevention in schools and communities, and work to understand and to respond to extremist movements online and offline. A few weeks ago, we committed an additional $75 million through the Canada Community Security Program for synagogues, for Jewish day schools, for community centers, and for institutions of every faith community whose safety is at risk. It pains me that we had to commit $75 million to this. Any dollar to this. We're working with provinces, municipalities, and our intelligence and law enforcement agencies to coordinate protection. I would like to take this time to commend Chief Carr, Deputy Commissioner Larkin, Chief Demkew, the Toronto Police Service today, and all your efforts for enforcement. Thank you. And when royal assent comes on Bill C9, we're going to give you additional laws to enforce soon. Ces mesures sont nécessaires.
Those measures are necessary. However, on their own, they are woefully inadequate. A country where Jewish schools require security guards, where synagogues require barriers, and where Jewish children attend school, confined behind a protection perimeter, is a country that protects its citizens, but is unable to abide by its civic compact.
It's not enough to protect. The deeper work is the renewal of the Canadian covenant itself. And to that end, I'm pleased to announce today the launch and the membership of Canada's new Ministerial Advisory Council on Rights, Equality and Inclusion. It will be chaired by the Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture, Mark Miller. The Council has a clear mission to combat racism and hate in all their forms, and to guide the Government of Canada as part of our efforts to build a fairer, more just, more inclusive society. I'm honored to announce that Senator Mark Gould, one of Canada's most collaborative, effective, principled voices on the scourge of anti-Semitism, has agreed to join that council. And I am directing that the first responsibility of that council is to address anti-Semitism from 4 different directions. First, the council will assess the nature, the scale, and the drivers of anti-Semitism in Canada, including across our public institutions, our workplaces, our campuses, our public services, our professional bodies, our online spaces. Because these are the places where the habits of civic life are formed, and where if those habits fracture, the fracture quickly spreads. Secondly, the Council will coordinate a whole-of-government approach to anti-Semitism, because combating anti-Semitism is the responsibility we all share. It will ensure that federal workplaces, federal policies, federal public safety programs, and community initiatives are aligned in protecting Jewish Canadians, confronting hate, and promoting inclusion. Third, the Council will improve research in the collection of data on hate incidents. It will build stronger data sharing systems, so all orders of government, all police services are working from the same facts and with the same alignment. And finally, the Council will measure clearly the impact of our efforts so that we can reinforce investments in education, in prevention, training, and community safety, those particular investments that are actually delivering real results and are helping to build a safer, more inclusive Canada. Now, particularly with respect to the first 2 items, I want to be clear about what these measures are and what they are not. They are not curtailments of freedom of expression. They are not constraints on legitimate criticism of any government on any subject anywhere. But they are. They are the basic standards we owe one another in our shared public institutions to ensure that no Canadian community is driven or even discouraged by those institutions by hatred. Now, institutional measures, even the strongest ones, cannot do the deeper work of true recognition alone. That deeper work falls to each of us as Canadians and to all of us in how we treat each other. As the Nobel Peace Prize laureate and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel once observed, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Time has come. Canadians must stand up for each other. That means all Canadians must speak out when we see anti-Semitism creep into our social media feeds, our classrooms, our workplaces. Because history teaches us that hatred, metastasizes when a society grows indifferent to it, when intimidation becomes routine, when conspiracy becomes discourse, when citizens choose to look away. We must learn from that history. And as Canadians, we must learn from our own times of both love and indifference. Au Pier 21 d'Halifax, au cours des
At
siècles
Pier
derniers,
21 in Halifax, throughout the last century, almost 1 million people set foot in Canada. They came from Europe, following two wars, countries that had been torn apart by conflict, and regions marked by poverty and persecution. They arrived here with their stories, their beliefs, their languages, and their hopes. They came with a heritage that has become that of Canada. And the covenant that they concluded, that covenant has since then become the very essence of Canadian citizenship. That is clear.
For immigration to Canada is clear. We welcome the peoples of the world in all their diversity, in all that splendor. We don't welcome the world's hatreds. When you come to Canada, you bring your faith, your tradition, your language, your story. You leave behind your animosities. Now, we haven't always lived up to all of that pact. 1939, the MS St. Louis, carrying 907 Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi Germany, sailed up the Atlantic coast seeking refuge. Cuba turned them away. The United States turned them away. In Canada, we looked away too. The ship returned to Europe. Hundreds of those passengers were murdered in the Holocaust. The St. Louis is the face of the Canadian promise denied. And Prime Minister Trudeau rightly apologized for it in 2018. The covenant we must renew today is in part the covenant we failed to honor then. And what does this moment require? It requires that we do not transpose foreign conflicts onto each other. It requires all of us as Canadians to stand up and protect our fellow citizens. It requires all of us to raise our voices in disgust and defiance when we see the ugly face of anti-Semitism. It requires that no Canadian child goes to school being seen as a representative of any foreign state. Cela implique qu'aucun Canadien
It means that no Canadian going about their daily activities should have to take responsibility for the acts committed by a government, wherever it happens to be. Whether it is in the subway, in a store, in a hospital, a university, in a synagogue, a mosque, a gurdwara, or a temple. It means that there must be political debates in Parliament and in the public space, but no targeting of private businesses, homes, and communities.
The covenant runs in every direction. Anti-Semitism breaks it, Islamophobia breaks it, burning churches breaks it, transphobia breaks it. The targeting of any Canadian for their faith, their origin, their identity breaks it. Now, I want to be clear, particularly to the Jewish community. Naming those other assaults is not equivalence. The crisis of anti-Semitism in Canada today is specific, it's severe, and it demands a targeted response. And that is what our government is fully committed to. It's also the case that for all Canadians to remind that the covenant we are renewing is comprehensive. It protects all of us by binding all of us. That's its strength, its source of legitimacy, it's all of our responsibility. So let me close where I began. Canada was summoned into being by peoples who learned imperfectly and over time to hold their differences in common. That hasn't always been easy, and we have at times failed. We failed Indigenous peoples. We failed the Acadians and the French settlers. We failed the passengers of the MS St. Louis. Each failure has taught us something about what it means to be the country we aspire to be. That means protection. It means outlawing and policing hate. It means preventing radicalization and addressing institutional biases. It means restoring Canada's promise by ensuring that each of us has the space and confidence to be their whole selves and to thrive. Canada promises a country in which Jewish Canadians can be visibly, fully, joyfully Jewish in public life, at school, at work, in the street, synagogue, in the academy, in the arts, in every place, because all of Canada is theirs. Canada promises a country in which Indigenous peoples, Muslim Canadians, Black Canadians, Sikh Canadians, Christian Canadians, queer Canadians, every Canadian can be visibly themselves without fear. Canada promises a country where our differences are nurtured, not managed, where differences are honored, not suppressed, our differences are lived out in common, not pushed to the margins. That's the covenant we're renewing today. That's the covenant that we all, as Canadians, must honor with our actions. Thank you very much for honoring me.
That was Prime Minister Mark Carney with a speech entitled The Canadian Covenant, speaking at a Jewish temple in Toronto, saying there many things members of the Jewish community have wanted to hear from their Prime Minister, and which this government and the previous Liberal government have been criticized for being slow to say, saying that the covenant of Canada, the abilities of people of different faiths and origin and race and beliefs to live together, is being tested by what he calls the scourge of anti-Semitism. He acknowledged the scale and the brutality of anti-Semitism in Canada in the last number of years and how it goes against the very social compact of the country. Outlined some of the legislative changes and the financial measures that his government has brought in, including to deal with this issue, including $75 million through the Canada Community Security Program for security at synagogues and Jewish day schools and community centers, saying that it pains me that we had to commit $75 million to this. That pains him that they had to commit any money to this, and making the point that a country that has to protect its citizens through bodyguards and barriers and perimeters is keeping them safe, but the broader social fabric is failing. He also outlined a new committee structure and a new mandate to deal with hatred in the country, made the point that Islamophobia, transphobia, other forms of hatred are also violations of this compact, but then making it clear to the Jewish community says that naming these assaults is not equivalence. The crisis of anti-Semitism in Canada today is specific, severe, and demands a targeted response. Our government is fully committed to that response. He acknowledged that there is an elevated and severe issue here, but that there's a recommitment to the civil compact. It has to be comprehensive, and it has to apply to everyone if it is going to work, urging people to leave the hatred of foreign conflicts behind when they come to Canada, and to leave it away from the schools and the temples and the streets here in Canada. The CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian has been listening into that. He joins me now. Rafi, a significant speech there by the Prime Minister, one that we're told he largely wrote himself. What stood out for you in what Mark Carney had to say here?
You were kind of getting there, David, when you were summarizing it, but I was struck when you said the civic compact has failed the Jewish communities of Canada. I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but he did say, he used the word failure, and it almost felt like an admission that the government or governments writ large have not been doing enough. Earlier today, we heard the opposition leader say Mark Carney should apologize to the Jewish community. I mean, that's not what he said. He didn't say I'm sorry, but he did say there has been a failure societally to protect Jewish communities from this hate. You're right, the PMO likes to tell us, the Prime Minister writes his own speeches, and I feel like we particularly get that message when they feel it's a powerful speech, and this one felt like something personal to Mark Carney. We were told he had spoken to various Jewish community leaders, and that this was a synthesis of all those conversations. This is not a Prime Minister who often deals with this kind of human rights material, right? Like we know he's more comfortable talking about trade and the economy with his background than these issues. But I'm not sure he came across as a rookie here. It did feel like he sat down and thought about this a lot before addressing the Jewish communities here. You touched on this new committee structure. They had previously announced the creation of this council. It's the first time we got some amount of detail on what they will be asked to do now. He said that he wants this council to take a really kind of deep look at what the drivers of anti-Semitism in Canada are, that he wants them to think of solutions, that he wants them to think about improving data sharing and collection of hate crimes and hate incidents within Canada. And what struck me is he said he wants this council to then kind of evaluate how the government has been dealing with this. I'm not sure we often get that kind of mandate when these kinds of committees are struck, right? Like go back and look at what we have been doing and tell us what the failures are. A council that will be reporting to Mark Miller, who is the Canadian Identity Minister now. So there is a bit of a, a kind of pathway toward cabinet, so that presumably the council's work is not kind of lost in the weeds. So that was kind of the main legislative thing we heard. Well, not legislative, but policy.
No, absolutely. And no, the mandate, the timelines, the budget, how you will measure success from this, so those are things we still need to hear about. But, Mark Carney is a deeply religious person himself, and this is a moral speech more than an economic speech of how he sees a pluralistic society functioning in the ideal, and certainly how it has been failing in the moment when it comes to the particular scourge of anti-Semitism, to use his word. CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian, thanks so much for helping us with this today. That's Rafi Boudjikanian here with me in the studio in Ottawa.
You're welcome.